Alright battlers, I go 10-0 with Shadow Snorlax in the Go Battle League Ultra League. You don't want to miss it. Let's get into these battles. Snorlax in general is a great Pokemon in the Ultra League. Its main role is countering Giratina, as its normal typing allows it to resist anything that Giratina can throw at it. It also makes for a great generalist. However, when the Rockets got a hold of it and turned it into a Shadow Pokemon, it gained 20% more attack but lost 20% of its defense. That means that this Snorlax is more offensively minded. It's better at just attacking opponents, whereas the original was just kind of relying on spam and bulk. So in this first battle here, we see the Poliwrath come out in the lead, and that is really bad for us. My opponent does swap into Swampert here. Now, when they bring out Swampert, it's not a hard counter to Poliwrath by any means. It's actually going to struggle quite a bit because these dynamic punches are going to add up, and the ice punch is also neutral. But it tells me that this opponent doesn't have anything in the back that can really counter my Poliwrath. So all I need to do is get through this Swampert, and maybe if I can preserve my Poliwrath, and then I'll have a clear shot to victory. But I still need to deal with my opponent's Poliwrath in the lead situation that we saw in the beginning anyway. So got to be really careful how we play this out. I do swap here into my Snorlax, get a few licks worth of energy, and I realize that swapping in is going to lure out my opponent's Poliwrath, but it's not a huge deal. This Snorlax can tank still in its Shadow mode. It still can tank one dynamic punch. My opponent tries to shield bait me there with the ice punch, realizing that they need to get these shields away from me. I do fire off a body slam here, and this does get shielded. Now, the body slams are going to do more damage, 20% more damage, as I mentioned in the intro, because of its shadow typing. It just allows Snorlax to hit a little bit harder. I do swap here into my Poliwrath to catch this dynamic punch. Really, really good play there. Fire off my own dynamic punch, and because the shields are down, this Poliwrath is out for the count. Out comes the Scizor, and my opponent leaves the game. So going into the next match, Poliwrath in the lead with Snorlax and Giratina. I do swap my teams up pretty often in this video, but I wanted to highlight the Snorlax play in particular. Here comes Articuno. This is a very tough matchup for me to deal with. Articuno, just with the Icy Wind spam, is just really hard to deal with. I do blame King for popularizing Articuno. It's an amazing Pokemon. He's an amazing content creator though, so again, just really, really intense battles. Here comes our Swampert. I'm going to fire off the Ice Punch, trying to bait a shield. I then swap into Giratina to try to catch this Hydro Cannon, which we do. Giratina doesn't have an overwhelming matchup with this Swampert, but it does get walled pretty hard by Articuno, so I want to bring it in here and get as much use of it as I can. I do shield up the Earthquake there because I really would love to line up the Ancient Power with that Articuno to burn that last shield. Let's see if we can pull it off. Here comes another attack from Swampert. It will be the Hydro Cannon. Dragon Breath works it down, but out comes the Articuno, and before it's able to Icy Wind me, I'm going to throw this Ancient Power. Super effective damage against Articuno. Again, trying to count as many Dragon Breaths as I can before that Icy Wind hits. I do allow it through, trying to save my final shield, and then in comes Poliwrath. Again, because I swapped out, the Icy Wind debuff is gone. Gonna throw the Ice Punch and bring it down. Out comes Venusaur. Now this is a very tricky situation to be in because I need this shield away from Venusaur, and I need to be really careful about how I spend my shield. So Poliwrath is not going to get the shield here. I'm going to allow it to faint with the Frenzy Plant. In comes Snorlax, and as you can tell, those boosted Shadow Licks are actually ticking down on this Venusaur really nicely. We do tank that first Frenzy Plant, and this is pretty much a guaranteed win at this point. This is pretty much locked in. All I need to do is get to one more Body Slam and shield up this final Frenzy Plant. So I burn my final shield here. Here comes our Body Slam. Out comes the Swampert, trying to sack swap it, but I hold it, and then I fire off the Body Slam here on the Venusaur. In the next game, I decided to lead Swampert. I do have my Snorlax and my Giratina in the back. Swampert's going to encounter that Typhlosion lead. Very, very good matchup for us. Out comes Giratina, and I'm actually going to get some more energy together on Swampert, knowing that Ancient Power and Dragon Claw aren't really going to affect Swampert that badly. I probably could have left it in there even longer, to be honest. I decided to bring in my Snorlax here, and the licks are going to add up really quick. Ghost type lick boosted 20% by the shadow bonus is just really taxing. However, it does make this matchup a little bit closer because the Giratina can actually do a little more damage to Snorlax than it would normally. So Giratina, again, with the Ancient Powers here, luckily no boost for the Tina. I'm going to go straight for another Body Slam here. Trying to chip this down, and if I can get a Body Slam in the bank and save it for my next opponent, that would actually be really, really special. We're actually able to lick down Giratina. And at this point, in comes Typhlosion, and I'm pushing really hard for the Earthquake. Battlers, if this lands, it will KO. And it doesn't. My opponent does decide to shield there. Very, very smart. Shadow Claw, being a ghost type attack, is resisted. That's how my Snorlax was able to survive. Typhlosion does have a higher attack stat than Swampert, so he does win the CMP tie. But I force him in this situation where he has to burn his shield to protect his Typhlosion. And here I'm sure that I can outpace Typhlosion, but I want to be sure that I have energy for whatever's in the back. So I do swap in Giratina here. Out comes Alolan Muck. So good thing I saved that energy on my Swampert. I probably could have gone straight through here, but I definitely have an opportunity to chip down this Muck and make it much more manageable for my Swampert in the back. The worst case scenario is I get farmed down by Snarls, and that's exactly what happened. So this Muck has a ton of energy loaded and ready to go. Here comes a Dark Pulse, and here I push for the Earthquake. I think Hydro Cannon might have been enough, but I wanted to be certain, and because that Typhlosion burned its energy earlier, I know with 4 Mud Shots I can outpace it to the Hydro Cannon, and that's exactly what we do. Going to the next game, Poliwrath with my Snorlax and Venusaur, and here you're really going to see Venusaur shine. I know a lot of grass Pokemon don't get a lot of love. I actually swap here into Snorlax against Clefable because I don't want to line up my hardest counter to the Fairy type immediately, because then my opponent would counter me with their swap in instead. So saving that Venusaur for the back, my opponent does shield the Earthquake, and now it's Lucario with boatloads of energy versus my team. I bring in my Poliwrath here, expecting the power-up punch. I don't shield, and it's actually a Shadow Ball, so it takes a good chunk of my life. The counters are adding up, and at this point, I do decide to shield, and it's Aura Sphere. So I think that would have definitely KO'd at that range just because it's such a high damage move. I do go for the Ice Punch here, and this is actually bad because the Lucario survives. I barely eke out enough life to win that matchup. In comes Clefable, and I go straight for a Dynamic Punch to chip away at it. And my last Pokemon is Venusaur. Venusaur needs a positive matchup against whatever's in the back, and it's Snorlax. So not a great situation at all. We have to be really careful about how we use our shields here. I realize that anything short of probably an Earthquake or possibly a Superpower from Snorlax will not KO. So I make a huge gamble here, and I decide not to shield my Venusaur. It's just the Heavy Slam, so we're able to farm down the rest of Snorlax with the Vine Whips. Out comes Clefable, and perhaps my opponent didn't think it would KO, or maybe they thought it was a bluff, but they don't shield, and we win. Going to this match, you see our Swampert in the lead with Snorlax and Giratina again, going up against Wilson the Piplup. Trainers, if you see yourself in my video, please let me know down in the comments below. GG's to everyone I battle. It's always a fun time in the Go Battle League when there is not Go Battle lag, so I really appreciate you all for the battles. Going here with Swampert versus Swampert, I'm going to go up and try to bait the Earthquake and land the Hydro Cannon, and we do that, but my opponent does not shield. My opponent did win CMP there, so I'm taking that into account. I don't want to get into another situation where we are tied for charge moves here, so I'm going to charge up and then swap into my Giratina. My opponent does hold their energy, come in with Togekiss. Now, I am going to get these Ancient Powers off against Togekiss, trying to force a shield out of it, and because I'm running Dragon Breath, I do more neutral damage to most of the meta, but I do less damage to Fairy types because Fairy does resist Dragon. So I do fire off the second Ancient Power there, drawing that last shield, which is exactly what I wanted. I come in here with Snorlax and Flamethrower, Ancient Power, Aerial Ace. None of it is going to one-shot Snorlax, so I allow it through. I lick down that Togekiss, and now I have to deal with the Swampert with energy and a Melmetal. In comes a Melmetal here. I am worried about a Superpower, so I actually do decide to shield Snorlax here. It will be the Rock Slide, but I fire off the Earthquake. I don't think this is enough to KO normally. Maybe it is. Let me know in the comments below. But that is a one-shot on that Melmetal. In comes that Swampert, and I meet it with my Swampert Hydro Cannon for the win. Going to this game, Giratina lead with Swampert and then Snorlax in the back. So Giratina lines up with Zangoose. Somebody has already noted Caleb Ping's strategies or seen his team on Twitter or something, because Zangoose is such a spicy Ultra League pick, and I know it's awesome, but I get really fortunate in these battles here. That was a close combat, and I survived. I locked my opponent in and made them shield that Hydro Cannon. Out comes Swampert here. I'm actually just trying to get some chip damage in on this opponent. I don't want to go up for the Earthquake because I don't want to risk risk not getting any damage off at all. So I do decide not to shield Swampert here, allowing the Hydro Cannon through. And I don't want my Giratina to line up with the Zangoose, but I have an opportunity here to generate a lot of energy and maybe throw some charge moves at that Zangoose when it comes back out. This Swampert does throw another Hydro Cannon, maybe an opportunity for an Earthquake there, but instead they decide to go double Hydro Cannon, so maybe more damage on aggregate, I'm not sure. So I do go here for the Ancient Power, trying to make sure I have enough energy to throw another Ancient Power at the Zangoose, and we do. My opponent really loves his Zangoose because he's trying to protect it here with the shields, but that just clears the way for my Snorlax to come in just a second. Zangoose does get the Night Slash, no boost, luckily enough for me. But the Zangoose does have close combat, so I am very careful here, deciding to shield, and it's just the Night Slash, but my opponent already put the nail in their own coffin, because this Body Slam is going to bring it down, and it does. Out comes my opponent's last Pokemon, which is Registeel. Now, Snorlax, I believe, can tank a Focus Blast, but I'm not 100% certain. I do call the bluff there, and it's just the Flash Cannon, so we got really lucky there. I fire off the Earthquake, and this will bring that Registeel deep into the red. All I need now is a Body Slam, and this game is all but assured. Body Slam Snorlax for the win. Going to the next game, Poliwrath with my Snorlax and Kangaskhan. This one is really sticky and it's really hard to get out of this one. Here we go, Poliwrath into Empoleon. So all I need to do is land that Dynamic Punch. My opponent swaps into Clefable and I go into Kangaskhan. Not a great idea on my part by any means, but running two normals is really tough on a team. I found that out when I tried this time, but I really want these Mud Slaps to count and I want my Kangaskhan to not be wasted, so I do decide to shield that first Meteor Mash and then go for another Power Up Punch here. Just trying to boost my Mud Slaps, but as you can tell, taking those turns to use the charge moves allow my opponent to stack up those charms, and he works me down really fast. My opponent did spend his shield, so I bring in Snorlax here, almost lick down that Clefable, and fire off the Body Slam here against the Gyarados. So this is a really good traditional anti-meta team. I mean, Gyarados has a really good matchup against Giratina, and then the Clefable does really well against Giratina as well, so it's unfortunate that my team wasn't as meta as it could have been, because I think it would have been a very different outcome otherwise. Poliwrath's fighting type does help it resist these crunches, so I'm not overly concerned. Trying to get to an Ice Punch here, and I try to be really cute and actually undercharge, and it cost me pretty badly. That Gyarados is still around. I get Charmed down, waste all of that energy, and then Clefable wins the CMP tie. So a couple of bad things happen in a row, but we have to make the best of it. I bring in my Snorlax here, and I've got a lot of energy ready. My opponent decides to bring in Empoleon, and check this out, the Shadow Earthquake. Again, just wreaking havoc on my opponent, one-shotting Empoleon, out comes Gyarados, and we lick it to death. So for this game, Poliwrath, Giratina, and Snorlax in the back. Poliwrath is going to encounter the mirror here. Mine is shiny, so it does more damage. Just kidding, it's not true, but it's always fun to say that. So Dynamic Punch is the move. He fires off the Ice Punch, trying to bait me, and I go straight for Dynamic Punch. Let's see if he shields. And he does. So called my move correctly, and I called his correctly. I'm at a health disadvantage, expecting Dynamic Punch here. I do shield, and now we are pretty much at square one, but I'm going straight Dynamic Punch, trying to be really aggressive because I want this Poliwrath out of the way. I actually make a swap here into Giratina, and Ghost is going to resist the fighting, so we eat that Dynamic Punch, no problem at all. In comes Snorlax, and here is a taste of my own medicine battlers. I have to face off against this Snorlax. It's not a Shadow, so it's not quite as cool, but it is going to wall my Giratina really, really hard. I'm actually not going to shield my Giratina here. Taking that Outrage, super effective damage, really, really hurts. But this allows me to line up my Poliwrath with my opponent's Snorlax, and I do have some residual energy from earlier. So I go straight for Dynamic Punch, hoping to land this, and my opponent blocks it. So I did get that final shield, which is actually really, really good for me. Nothing here can really hurt Poliwrath that badly, so I allow the Body Slam through. Out comes Typhlosion. I go straight for my Dynamic Punch here. And my opponent is switch locked, so I'm going to go up for another move, but I'm going to shield my Poliwrath, saving it for that Snorlax when I do encounter it again. In comes my Snorlax. Shadow Licks are going to almost KO this Typhlosion. We have to eat this Blast Burn, but it is not a big deal. Still surviving in the yellow. My opponent, I suspect, is going to bring out Poliwrath, so I go straight for the Body Slam here, and this is actually just a showcase of how boosted these attacks are. Look at that. Body Slam almost KOing that Poliwrath. Out comes Snorlax, and it is the Shadow versus the normal Snorlax mirror. Such an interesting way to end this match. We are licking each other to death. My opponent gets off one more charge attack, and I think this is enough to KO, and it is. In comes my Poliwrath here, and the Mud Shots will win it. Going to this game, Poliwrath, Giratina, and Snorlax in the back. Pairing the Giratina and the Snorlax was something I did quite a bit. Snorlax is a pretty try-hard, or excuse me, Giratina is a pretty try-hard meta option, but I really enjoyed using it. Here comes my Giratina to face off against this Armored Mewtwo. I really wanted to do an Armored Mewtwo video back in preseason, but I felt like it was really hard. Now that Armored Mewtwo has Psyshock though, or excuse me, Psystrike, I think I might actually do it. So if you watch this far and you want to see Armored Mewtwo in the Ultra League, Go Battle League, let me know and I might do a video on it. Here comes the Psystrike, which we do decide to shield. I really want to get some shields away from my opponent, so I go for the Ancient Power here. And I also don't want my Snorlax to line up with it in case it has Dynamic Punch. So we do bring down the Mewtwo. Out comes Snorlax here, and they're just probably going to farm me up pretty comfortably. I do go for the Ancient Power here, again, hoping for the boost. Even through these 10 battles, I didn't get the boost once, and it just kind of sucks, but it's okay. Snorlax is going to spend his energy here with the Body Slam, bringing down Giratina and clearing the way for my Poliwrath. Out comes Poliwrath, going to go straight for a Dynamic Punch, not giving my opponent an opportunity to switch out. My opponent does shield that, and we are almost to another one. Here, I really need to protect Poliwrath, so I decide to shield it there. And then out comes Giratina to eat my Dynamic Punch, a complete reversal of what I did to my opponent just a few turns ago. Here comes my Snorlax though, and this is a shadow boosted Snorlax, so the licks are going to add up even quicker. That Dynamic Punch damage is actually going to do me a lot of favors here because it's weakened that Giratina just a bit so that I have less room to make up, or less ground to cover. So I go for the Body Slam here. I know this won't be very effective, but I'm trying to burn some shields, and we get that shield, which is really special. Thinking about going for another Body Slam, I am completely out of shields. This is a very, very close matchup towards the end here. I do fire off the Body Slam against this Giratina one more time, and then look for the swap to try to catch this charge move, and I am making my opponent pay. The Dragon Claw is not going to do very much to Poly at all. We actually are almost able to farm down with Mud Shots, but I wanted to be careful, so I go for the Ice Punch. Out comes my opponent's Snorlax. All I need is Dynamic Punch, and we don't get it. My opponent's Snorlax, the purified Snorlax, takes me down. Out comes my Shadow Snorlax. That timer is ticking down. Will this Body Slam be enough to flip the game in my favor? Health is down, licks, and win. 1 second timeout. Here we go, the last game of the video. I have Togekiss, Giratina, and Snorlax. Here comes the Togekiss mirror. Now I really want to get rid of this Togekiss and win the lead situation, so I'm actually not going to throw a charge move here, opting instead for that extra turn of charm damage. And I don't mind losing the shield here because I really want to win switch advantage, and we do. My opponent's going to bring in their Pokemon here. It will be Swampert. I go straight for the Ancient Power. And my opponent makes a pretty big error there by shielding. I don't think that was necessary at all. I bring in my Giratina here. And at this point, I'm probably expecting an Earthquake, but I want to save that last shield. Here comes the Earthquake, and here comes my opponent's Giratina. So I have a wonderful Giratina counter in the back. I'm just going to bring out the Snorlax here and fire off these licks. Now, these licks are going to add up really, really quick. As you can tell throughout the video, the lick damage is really intense, and it looks like Go Battle League has fixed that issue where there was some lag with the one-turn fast moves. Things like Dragon Breath, Lick weren't getting through as quickly as they should, and it looks like it's pretty smooth at this point. So thank you, Niantic, for fixing that. Now let's just focus on getting rid of the rest of the lag. So I really want the Earthquake here. It's a little overzealous. I probably could have gone double Body Slam, but either way, Earthquake is going to get shielded. Out comes my Giratina. All I need to do is Dragon Breath down to low health and then fire off the Ancient Power, and I think that will win it for us. My opponent does fire off the Hydro Cannon. I shield. Here comes the Ancient Power. This is going to land, and then a few more Dragon Breaths, and my opponent is fainted. Trainers, if you enjoyed this video, please leave me a like. Comment down below what you thought. If you like Shadow Snorlax, or if you're using another Shadow Pokemon in the Go Battle League, let me know down in the comments below. I'm always fascinated to hear what you guys are using. And then if you really enjoyed this and you want to see more, just take a second and subscribe. It means a lot to me. I'll see you in the next video.